Greetings, folks. Iolair here. It is Wednesday, July 8th, and Wargaming has released World of Warships 096 to the servers, at least on North America and Asia. I think the European servers pick them up tomorrow, Thursday, July 9th. Wargaming has posted to its website three important articles that I recommend everybody go and read. Yes, I realize that reading is OP, please nerf, but these articles go into the gory details around, well, two in particular go into gory details around the German carrier early access event, all the details around that, as well as the update on 096. There's also an article that goes into some sort of the final wrap up of the Soviet cruiser branch split. But I strongly recommend folks, like I said, go read these. I find that like 90% of the questions that I see get posted to different warships forums can be answered by just reading these articles. I will point out, I think, some important topics that might be more easily overlooked. But I'll cover some of these things in some general detail. But again, just go read the articles. This will get you most of the information that you need. So I think the most important article is the update on 096. Again, you can go watch the video that features Dasha, but that is very high level. Obviously, there's an announcement of the German carrier event. The second article that I'll get to here in a second goes into the details around what's involved in that event, how to get early access, the rewards for completing missions, and so forth. But this covers things at a summary level, also talks about earning this new premium Iron Cross camo that can be picked up for the Tier 10 German ships, as well as some other changes. And they talk about general features of the German carriers. Again, you guys can read through this. Made some visual changes to the Hamburg port. Still looks very overcast thanks to it being on the North Sea. There's the announcement of the next round of clan battles. This is going to be the Tier 6 games, 7 versus 7 format, and the clan battles occur starting mid-July, ending in late August. Next round of ranked battles, which will be played on Tier 8 ships or with Tier 8 ships. That starts again in late July and wraps up in mid-August. A major UI change to the modules tab. So it's been renamed to equipment, and a bunch of stuff has been consolidated into a single screen. There's a screenshot here. I kind of wish they had used not a tier 10 ship to demonstrate this, but the idea is that on the left-hand side, you see your ship and the different researchable modules, like on the engines or the guns or torpedoes, etc. Then there's access to the upgrade slots and access to the consumable slots as well. So pretty nice, and probably a fairly overdue UI simplification to the game, but welcome nonetheless. Another big change is, or fairly substantial change, are improvements to the audio. Now, some of you might remember, I think it was a little over a year ago, that Wargaming had a, quote, major update to the audio that was like really detested by the playing community when it first came out. It was clearly broken. The sound volumes were way too loud. It was unplayable for a lot of players. Hopefully we won't have a repeat of that, but they have made some adjustments, and I did hear some of these audio improvements when I was testing on the public test server for 096, and I didn't see anything that was like, dramatically bad, bad about it. I think the reality is that this is more ambiance than anything else, but I think you will find that some of the audio elements like planes and engines and so forth will sound, quote, more realistic. The key point here that I want to call out is this one. So it says, after the release of update 096, you may need to set the sound parameters in the game settings. We'll talk about how to best configure them in a dedicated article. So consider this as your sort of fairly subdued warning to make sure that you check your audio settings after you get into game. You may need to tweak them in case something is either too loud or too soft, or some of these other changes that they made are not appealing to you, or maybe you want to boost up, whatever. So just something to take a look at. They haven't stated when they're going to have this dedicated article to go into detail around sound adjustments, but that is forthcoming as well. Okay, oops. Didn't mean to do that. Go back. Okay, so the in these update articles for all of the releases, there's always this block of called, quote, other changes. And these areas are often overlooked by a lot of players, and they often, however, include a lot of important information. There are some trivial things, like the last 2 or 3 sections tend to be fairly nominal changes that might only affect certain players. Like the last section covers mostly bug fixes that they've made that have affected a minority of players. But this particular update has some important changes that I definitely want to call out here. So first of all, there have been some significant changes to the low tier matchmaking that affect both newcomers and matchmaking for lower tiers in general. So again, I'm not going to go into read this verbatim, but the spirit of the changes that is that for newcomers, in tier 1 through tier 4 ships, they will continue to be in their protected matchmaking for 200 games rather than the current 69. So for those of you who don't remember this, or maybe the game has moved on since you've moved up, new players or new accounts, when they reach random battles, they are placed in a special queue with other new players. And up until now, through 095, it was the first 69 games that they played in tier 1 through tier 4 ships where they were in the special queue. That queue has now been increased, or that number of games has been increased to 200, so that they get a longer period in the sort of new player experience. Now, it also can affect tier 5 ships, but only if the tier 5 ships are placed in a top tier tier 5 match. If you're in a tier 5 ship with fewer than 200 battles and you get put into a higher tier match, you'll be put in the general queue, which to me seems a little bit well, it seems to be a little bit contradictory. I guess I kind of would have hoped that if you were in protected matchmaking as a new player at tier 5, you would stay within tier 5 for those first 200 battles, but whatever. But the key here is that also that if the waiting time exceeds 3 minutes, teams will be rounded out with bots. And these bots will play at sort of at a fairly low AI level. And that, again, that's something that happens today to try to balance things. So that's one change for low tiers. The other big change for low tiers is that they are going to round out teams with bots after the first player in the game has waited, the queue has exceeded 3 minutes. So the idea is, apparently, well, in fact, they have acknowledged this, that basically lower tier matches often were short-sided, meaning fewer than 12 players per side. And what they're looking to do is they're going to round out the team with bots. So you're still technically in a random battle. So you're still earning random battle experience and credits and so forth. But teams will be rounded out with bots. And these particular bots will operate at the same AI level that they do in operation. So they're a little smarter that way. So in any case, some changes for those of you who are either supporting players that are new or play at lower tiers occasionally. Game balance changes. This is the announcement of this covers the changes to the AP bomb damage on carriers. This section also announces changes to individual ships. This is where the nerfs and buffs are announced in these articles. So again, I'm not going to go through these in gory detail. You can read through these. But this is an important section for folks to go through so that if you play any of these ships, you know what the changes are that are being made to your ships. And again, this is where I end up seeing a lot of questions get posted to different forums saying, hey, my ship changed, what happened? If you come to this section, this game balance change will cover a lot of those points. Okay. Now, the next point under this other changes section, to me, is actually quite important, and I think was a little understated. In fact, I don't know that it was even covered in the video that has Dasha as the narrator. So Wargaming has adjusted, for lack of a better term, the turning radius circle of many ships in the game. So at the end of this section, Wargaming calls out, here, I'm going to scroll down here to this. You can see all the ships involved. They they give credit to Little White Mouse, or sometimes referred to as April White Mouse, who's in the CC program, for calling out and calling to attention a very fairly significant matter, which is the actual turning radius of a ship in many cases does not match what is stated in the ship parameters. And what Wargaming has done is that they've taken advantage of this situation around these changes to do two things. One is look to make sure that that the actual turning radius of ships matches what is stated in the ship parameters, but also in some cases they've actually changed the advertised turning circle of a number of ships. So again, I'm not going to go through each of these ships in detail. You guys can read through this. But the key is that there are a lot of ships where they've made some tweaks. Some cases they are going to be effectively nerfs. In other cases, there are going to be some minor buffs. In other cases, they're going to be almost immaterial, mainly just some cleanup. So probably the most egregious nerf is the Midway, based on what I could read through. So its actual turning circle radius in 095 was 836 meters. It's stated turning circle in the ship parameters. So this is in port when you go and on the upper right hand corner where you can look at the ship parameters. The stated turning circle was 1230. So the Midway actually had a turning circle radius that was a third better than it's stated in the ship parameters. And what Wargaming has done is they've actually, so the first column is what it currently was in 095. The second column is what it was stated in 095 in the ship parameters, what the turning circle radius was supposed to be. And then the third column is what they are actually implementing for 096. And so presumably what you see in 096 in the ship parameters will now actually be the turning circle radius. So the Midway, like I said, is probably the most egregious. It basically had a third better turning circle radius than advertised, and they've actually corrected that. So for those of you playing the Midway and are concerned with autopilot or other things that are worried about running into islands and stuff, this is kind of a big deal potentially. This means you have a much worse turning circle radius than you used to have. Again, like I said, I'm not going to go through each of these in details, but I'll call out a couple others just so you get a sense. So here's another example. The Fiji, the actual turning radius in game as of 095 was 666 meters. The stated turning circle radius in the parameters screen was 590. But so you actually had worse turning circle radius than stated. And they've adjusted the final turning circle radius in 096 to essentially be the same. I mean, it's technically slightly worse. So players of the Fiji won't materially see any change in how they play the ship, but they were not benefiting from a turning circle radius that was stated in the ship parameters. Okay, so again, like I said, I'm not going to go through all these, but you can take a look, and they've listed all the ships, and you can decide which ones you care about and which ones you don't care about. Okay, so I think that's an important topic for folks to go through. And then, like I said, these last three content addition and changes, these are things that are usually more minor. They've announced, they've sort of, again, this is just sort of housekeeping. They've announced that the 3 new Soviet heavy cruisers are available in the tech tree. They've now added a number of ships that can be earned through super containers. They've added expendable camouflages that can now be earned through super containers. I'm not going to get into the debate in this video about whether camouflages constitute a good return on a super container. That's a separate dialogue, but they've announced that. They've also made some changes to earning the aircraft carrier commander emblems. Basically, I think they've increased the average damage that you have to earn. Any emblems that you've already earned, you should retain. That even happens today, that if you've earned an emblem and then your average damage declines below what the emblem required, you don't lose the emblem. So I don't think that they're going to take away any emblems that people have already earned. They've also announced, this is an important topic, Wargaming has announced simplification of the research process for a number of modules across a variety of ships, including the Karlsruhe. Whoops, did that again, sorry. The Karlsruhe, the Monahan. Let's see. The Karlsruhe, the Monahan. They've removed the Charlie Hulls on the Farragut, Mahan, Benson, and Nuremberg. They're going to offer credit for folks that have research modules that are being dropped, things like that. So they're simplifying these models, and for the majority of these ships, these are going to be like, they're actually, in some ways, they're going to be a benefit. So, for example, the Monahan will now pick up her improved torpedoes with the Bravo hull, which means that you can have both the 4 guns on the Monahan and have the 9.2 kilometer torpedoes. So in effect, the Monahan is getting a buff. Or at least that's the way I read this, and hopefully I didn't get that wrong, and somebody will have to correct me in chat. But that's the way I read this. They've also announced some tweaks to how the planes are being researched on the Lexington and Midway. So again, that's becoming diminishingly less critical. In the next section, they talk about some visual and technical enhancements. Again, these are just minor tweaks that affect a minority of players, like lighting and various ports and things like that. And then the last section, other changes and improvements. They usually talk about some geometry, texture changes that they make on a variety of ships. And they also list among more prominent bugs that they fixed in the game. Again, these tend to be more minor. Sometimes they can be significant, but you can read through those. So again, bottom line is, this is probably the most important article to read through and get through the details on. The next article is important for those who are really interested in early access to the German carriers, excuse me. There also announcement. This covers the details about how to earn German tokens to pick up the new Iron Cross premium camouflages that are available or going to be available for a number of the German ships. Again, read through this. I'm not going to go into this in gory detail because I don't want to make the video too long. But these early access articles cover all of the specifics about how to earn the tokens, how many tokens you can earn, what things you have to do to earn them. So, and most of these are coming through directives and combat missions. And then there is also containers where you can earn a chance, or you get a chance to get a combat mission to pick up one of the tier 4, 6, or 8 German carriers. There are premium containers in the premium shop that give you higher guaranteed rewards on camouflages and some other goodies. And they also they based on this graphic, they claim that you have an increased chance of getting a combat mission for one of the German carriers. But the way that this language is phrased right here, a chance to get a special combat mission that will unlock early access, it doesn't say explicitly in the language that the chance to earn the ship is higher with the premium container, although historically that's been true. And certainly the graphic here suggests that there's a higher chance, but whether there actually is, it doesn't matter. The key here is earning these containers and stuff like that, and having a chance is basically essentially your public system testing of these carriers or any ships for that matter. So if you get them, you get them. If you don't, you don't. I usually don't sweat it because by the time the ships come out within 1 to 2 releases after early access anyway, and so getting early access is a nice little bonus for me. But I don't lose sleep over it. I usually don't buy premium containers anyway to try to increase my chances. These are never guaranteed, and people shouldn't have, in my opinion, people shouldn't have the mindset that somehow they're being ripped off by not getting a chance to earn it. You do. It's random. It's gambling. That's what it comes down to. And then like I said, they talk about how to earn the German tokens, which is where you can expend those to pick up the new camouflage, the Iron Cross camouflage. And again, you can just read through this, and they talk about what the daily shipments are for this event. So another good article to read through. And then last but not least is a pretty short article that sort of wraps things up on the Soviet cruiser branch split. Again, if you've already been following the news up to this point, and the community contributors, or even a number of you have earned some of these ships through the early access event, most of this should just be review, and you can just read through this at your leisure. So those were kind of the articles that I really wanted to call out here for folks to take a look at. Again, please do read them. I hope at least my summary gave you some motivation to go look at them, and gave you some tips on things to look for. And leave your comments below. I'd be curious to see what people's thoughts were about these events and how things are going for you in the game. And with that, we hope to see you out there on the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.